It was during the reign of the Gupta Emperor Kumargupta that the Huns invaded India. The question of who these Huns were, from where they came, and their early history is not much discussed. So in this video, I will try to answer these questions. Now, in our discussion, we should first focus on the name Hun itself. So historians are not entirely clear whether these Huns called themselves Huns or not. And the reason behind this is pretty simple. We have very little evidence in which these Huns called themselves Huns. So for example, we have only two evidence. The first comes from some coins in Central Asia where the term King of the Huns is used. The second evidence is quite interesting because it comes from India and particularly from the city of Kaushambi. Kaushambi is near Prayagraj, and here we have an inscription in which the term Hunraj appears. Although there are some scholars who believe that this inscription is not authentic or original. But whatever the case may be, it is clear that this term Hun is not necessarily used by the Huns themselves, and that is why we see that the term Hun is very rare in Hunnic sources. Now there are some scholars who believe that the term Zhuangnu, which appears in Chinese sources, is similar to how the Huns described themselves. Now the relation between this term Zhuangnu and the original term which the Huns used themselves is not entirely clear, and this association is also a speculation. So we have to wait for more evidence to see or to know how the Huns described themselves. The same is also true of the original homeland of the Huns. There are some scholars who argue that the Altai mountains was the original homeland of the Huns. And according to the most plausible theory, it was from the North Altai region that the Huns migrated towards the Kazakh steppe. Now, the reason behind this migration could be due to the climatic condition of this period. And from the various research that was done in this region, some scholars argue that around the first half of 4th century AD, there was a climatic shift in the climate of this region. So what happened was that there was a sudden dip in the climate of this region. This dip or this decrease in the temperature caused massive destruction of the herds of people that were living in this region. And because of this climatic condition, the migration of the Huns began. This theory can be corroborated from the Chinese sources, where we find that around the same time, that is in the middle of 4th century AD, the Chinese sources are reporting an invasion of the Huns from the Altai region. So it appears that the people who were migrating from the Altai region and the people who were attacking the Chinese were the same. So what we see is that when the Huns migrated from the Altai region to the Kazakh steppe, they also incorporated the different tribes which they encountered during this migration. Now, after descending on to the Kazakh steppe, it appears that the Huns branched off into two directions. One branch moved westwards and reached Volga, and it was this branch that threatened the Roman Empire. The second branch moved southwards and came into contact with the Sasanid Empire, and it is this branch which is important to our story. It is around the same time we learn from a Roman source that the Sasanid Emperor Shapur II confronted an invasion from the nomads of Central Asia. Now the term which appears in this Roman source for these nomads is not Huns. Instead, the term is Chionites or Shionites. Now the term Chionites or Shionites, according to some scholars, is similar to the Sassanid term Hun. And this term Hun, we can clearly see, suggests the Huns. So it appears that around this time, these Huns who had migrated from the Altai region were attacking the northern boundaries of the Sasanid Empire. And this Roman source also tells us that Shapur II was able to win victories over these nomads. And it appears that after this victory, these Huns had accepted the overlordship of the Sasanians. And that is why we find that the Roman sources tell us that these Huns or these Hunnites were employed by the Sasanid against their war with the Romans. And we also see that it was around this time that these Huns also began to settle in the region of Tukharistan or Bactria. So basically the region north of Hindu Kush. From this region, archaeologists have discovered coins in which the name Varhran or Bahram appears. Now, we are not very sure whether this person was a Hun or not, but according to most scholars, this person was a Hun. We can say this because in his later coins, a special symbol appears, and this symbol is called tamga. A tamga is a type of seal or a symbol that was used by the nomads of Eurasia. So the fact that this tamga appears in later coins of Bahram suggests that he was a Hun, and it also suggests that during the later part of his reign, he has achieved some sort of an independent status from the Sasanid overlordship. Now, what is also interesting about the coins of Bahram is that in his coins, he also describes himself as Kushan Shah, which suggests that he was also claiming to be the successor of the later Kushan. This can be seen from the fact that most of the coins of Bahram are imitation of later Kushan coins. So it is quite clear that this Bahram was claiming to be the successor of Kushan. We also see that this was the same region where the Kushan had once ruled, and now it is the Huns who are ruling this region. The successor of King Varhran was someone called Kidara, and the reign of King Kidara was very important for these Huns who have now settled in the Bactrian region. We can say this because from the reign of King Kidara onwards, these Huns were now described by other sources as Kidarite Huns. So it appears that during the reign of King Kidara, something important might have happened. Now, in my view, there are two possibilities that could explain why the reign of King Kidara was considered so important by these Huns. One could be the fact that it was during the reign of this King Kidara that these Huns achieved independent status from the overlordship of the Sassanids. But we have no evidence to prove this. The second possibility, in my view, is much more possible because what we find is that it was during the reign of King Kidara that these Huns crossed the Hindu Kush mountains and they moved southwards. After crossing the Hindu Kush mountains, they not only controlled the Kabul valley, but they went on to control the entire Gandhar region. We can say this because from the region of Kabul, we have found coins of King Kidara. Then there is a Chinese source which tells us that south of the Hindu Kush, the city of Faulao Shah was the center of Kidarite power. So the city of Faulao Shah, according to most scholars, was the city of Purushpura, which is the modern day Peshawar. So it appears that the city of Peshawar was under the control of the Kidarite Huns. So most likely it is because of the fact that during the reign of King Kidara that the expansion of Huns into the Indian subcontinent happened. That is why the successors of King Kidara were called by other sources as Kidarite Huns. So this term Kidarite is not an ethnicity. It is a designation, and particularly a dynastic designation. So we should always keep this in mind. Now, what is interesting about the Kidarite Huns is that although they have expanded into the Indian subcontinent and they now could be described as a great power, they still have not dropped the title of Kushan Shah. They still regard themselves as the successor of the Kushanas. And this is quite interesting because what we see is that other sources, for example, Armenian sources, describe these Kidarite Huns as Kushanas, and we find that the Chinese sources describe these Kidarites as lesser Yuchis. We all know that Yuchis is the term which is used for the Kushanas in Chinese sources. So it was during the reign of King Kidara that the Huns expanded into the Indian subcontinent. Now the date of this expansion could be seen from the coins of King Kidara that are found in the region of Kabul, and most of these coins tell us the date 388 AD. So this suggests that it was before 388 AD that the Huns moved into south of the Hindu Kush and they conquered the region of Gandhar. After gaining control over Gandhar region, now they were threatening the Gupta Empire itself. Now the question of how this struggle between the Guptas and the Huns unfolded will be discussed in a later video. When it will be uploaded, you can watch it here. Thank you for watching.